There is a chilling paradox embedded in the words, "I need space." Because when a woman says this to a man who has been meticulous, attentive,
You
and
betrayed
seemingly
me.
flawless,
After
it stuns
everything
him
we've
into
been
silence.
through, you
How can the
stabbed me
very
in the
efforts
back.
meant to glue her closer
I didn't
become the
do
fracture
anything.
that pushes her away? This isn't just a relationship hiccup, it's a biological fact. A secret written deep into the folds of female instinct, carefully coded through millions of years of evolution. And if you don't understand this, you will forever be at a disadvantage, unknowingly sabotaging your own power to attract, to retain, to dominate the romantic battlefield. Most men hear, "I need space," like a rebuke, a condemnation of their efforts. They think it means, "You are doing too much," or "I don't love you enough." But this isn't about love. This is about biology, an evolutionary signal that women send when their primal map of attraction senses imbalance. It's the mysterious, often misunderstood language of internal desire shedding its mask. When she asks for space, she's not just asking for physical distance. She's signaling a deeper neurological shift, a cognitive recalibration that your current strategy has triggered a warning flare in her mind. Let's peel this apart. Science reveals that female attraction is anything but linear or logical in the way men often expect. It's an adaptive dance involving hormones such as oxytocin, dopamine, and cortisol, each
Stop!
acting as a
You
chemical
need to
messenger
stop
in a
right
complex
there.
game of approach and avoidance. Oxytocin, the so-called bonding hormone, creates connection, closeness, the warmth of togetherness. Dopamine floods circuits during moments of excitement, novelty, and unpredictability. A primal cocktail intoxicating the brain's reward system. But here is the catch. Too much closeness, too much predictability, can flood the brain with cortisol, the stress hormone, which triggers the opposite of desire. It's the body screaming in neurochemical panic, threat, withdrawal, distance. This is the secret many men never see coming. They believe in the myth that consistency, openness, and constant availability are signs of love that women crave. Yet, neurologically, prolonged predictability can dull the dopaminergic spark that ignites passion. A woman's subconscious craves the tension of subtle challenge, the mystery of the unknown, the thrill of space where desire breathes. Too much comfort can become a biological threat to attraction. The very closeness men strive for, when delivered without the crucial ingredient of controlled distance, triggers a biological retreat.
Withdrawal.
Evolutionary
Distance.
psychology fleshes out this truth in darker shades. Women's choices have always folded into survival. Selecting a mate isn't merely about warmth and stability. It's about genetic advantage, vitality, and dominance. The need for space is an ancient signal from the subconscious, a test of strength and independence in a man. It asks, are you a man who can withstand silence, absence, and ambiguity, or will you crumble at the first sign of emotional distance? This is the hidden meaning behind the words, a challenge disguised as disengagement. That's why men who do everything right, the good partner, the considerate lover, the least threatening presence, are often the ones who lose her interest fastest. Because kindness and predictability are easy to mimic, but the secret advantage lies in maintaining an aura of autonomy, mystery, and selective unpredictability. This triggers the female brain's reward centers, flooding them with dopamine that fuels desire rather than comfort that fosters complacency. When a man loses this edge by leaning too heavily into closeness, the woman's primal warning system kicks in. She needs to pull back, to create space, to reset the internal balance of attraction. But this withdrawal is not an endpoint. It is a signal begging for interpretation. It is a secret code encrypted in psychology and evolution that, if cracked, gives any man a psychological advantage beyond kindness or persistence. The challenge is knowing how to read this signal without panic or desperation. To wield the unknown and the dark allure of space as a tool for magnetic connection rather than a death knell for attraction. Most men never learn to decode this. They hear, I need space, and feel rejection, confusion, or fear. They grasp at comfort and seek immediate answers. But the truth, that quiet, taut signal, is not a breakup, but a crossroads. It is an invitation to mastery in female psychology. To understand the paradox that what she most wants is often what she most fears to lose. To hold space yet hold power. To withdraw yet dominate. The shadows of attraction are woven in complexity. Beneath the surface of her plea lies a secret forcescape of hormones and impulses. Ancient impulses that neither truth nor virtue can override. He who learns this hidden language enters a realm of magnetism few ever access. But he who misreads it will only feel the cold void where affection once lived. A void marked by open windows and slammed doors. What if I told you that "I need space" is not a rejection but a silent test for dominance? That space is not emptiness but tension? That within the silence, the pulse of attraction either dies or evolves into something darker, more compelling? To master this, you must unravel why proximity can kill desire and distance can ignite it. In these hidden depths lies the key to reversing the tide. But to see it clearly, we must first confront the frightening biology of female safety versus sexual attraction, and the brutal trade-offs your masculinity must navigate in the shadows between love and lust. The moment she whispers, "I need space," a ripple stirs not just between you two but deep within the very architecture of her mind. It is not simply about distance. It is about the violent negotiation between conflicting primal forces inside her. You must understand that beneath her words lies a battlefield, a collision of two ancient, inseparable impulses, safety and desire. These impulses are locked in eternal tension, each pulling at her core. And your role, as a man who seeks to transcend the ordinary, is to navigate this delicate balance with an instinct sharper than any algorithm of logic or charm. Picture this. Safety is the shelter, the steady rhythm, the nurturing warmth that her brain craves like a child in a storm. It is anchored in oxytocin, the hormone that fosters bonding, trust, the biological infrastructure of connection that invites her to lean in, to trust, to rest in the familiar contours of your presence. Yet, paradoxically, safety is also the slow killer of passion. When safety becomes monotony, the very essence that once drew her near quietly shatters the fragile web of attraction. It anesthetizes the thrill centers of her brain, leaving only the residue of comfort without desire. This is why when she pulls back and asks for space, what she truly seeks is not mere physical separation. She demands the restoration of a much more complex internal ecosystem, a recalibration of desire's currency. You see, female attraction dances not with comfort, but with the intoxicating adrenaline of uncertainty and challenge. Her dopamine circuits spike not from predictability, but from the puzzle of the unknown. The flicker of danger wrapped in invitation. The subtle suggestion that you are not fully hers to command. This is the biological architecture of temptation. The whispered promise that you remain, despite proximity. A mystery still worth decoding. You must grasp this hidden desire because it carries a profound evolutionary weight. Long before the constructs of modern romance, the ancestral woman had to constantly judge not just the strength or kindness of a male, but his independence, his capacity to exist beyond her immediate control. This was not cruelty but survival. Genes that favored a man who could tolerate ambiguity, who could stand silent in absence, who did not cave to relentless neediness were far likelier to secure her trust and, more importantly, her lasting desire. The invisible test of space is the evolutionary gauntlet through which a man's dominance is either forged or undone. Hormones are the silent generals commanding this battlefield. Cortisol, the stress hormone, functions as a sentinel against emotional suffocation. When too much closeness floods her system, cortisol surges, triggering a biological signal akin
As
to
we move
danger.
along the strand,
Contrary to the
we can
fragile male
observe the
ego,
critical
this is
interplay
lost
of
neither
these
on her
molecular
consciousness nor on her
structures and their
subconscious.
corresponding
This is not
formulas.
rejection. This is a neurological fire drill, a callback to ancient survival instincts warning her to protect her internal equilibrium. The paradox emerges. You are both her salvation and her threat. the anchor that grounds and the chain that binds. But only one can prevail if desire is to burn bright rather than flicker out. What happens when a man misunderstands this matrix? When he perceives space as a sentence, the very psychology of desperation cracks open, spilling into his behavior. He floods her inbox. He overrides silence with calls. He resorts to explanations to soothe his ego. In doing so, he lashes out against the evolutionary code of attraction he fails to decode. His desperation disrupts the tension she subconsciously demands. It floods her brain with additional cortisol, further eroding attraction, deepening the emotional void. The cycle tightens like a noose, transforming space from a test into a breaking point. But what if, instead, the true master of this dance sees space not as absence, but as a dance of dominance disguised in withdrawal? He leans into the silence without fear, allowing her the very uncertainty that triggers dopamine's rush. He becomes the enigma, the prize not fully given, the fortress not readily breached. His magnetic tension doesn't push or pull, it simply is. State of being unshaken by distance, unmoved by ambiguity. This is the secret weapon buried deep beneath the layers of kindness and effort. A construct forged in the crucible of behavioral paradox and evolutionary design. It's what separates the ordinary from the irresistible. Imagine this power. To wield absence like a whispered challenge. To create space that isn't emptiness but charged attention. An unspoken promise that her withdrawal only strengthens the gravitational pull of your presence. This is not manipulation but mastery. A sacred dance of psychological forces where desire is nurtured in the fertile tension between closeness and distance. Every moment of silence becomes a pulse. Every retreat a strategic advance. Every unanswered question a silent vow of dominance. This knowledge accounts for something far darker and more compelling than the surface of affection or comfort. It exposes the raw, relentless truth that female desire is never content with mere union. It demands the spark of conflict, the thrill of uncertainty, the savage beauty of challenge. You must understand that securing affection is trivial compared to commanding desire, which thrives in the shadows where safety's light dares not linger. It is within this twilight zone that attraction lives or dies. So the true question lingers long after her words fade. Can you hold the sanctity of space without relinquishing your influence? Can you withstand the piercing silence without surrendering to panic? For to command desire, you must first become comfortable with being lost, not in rejection, but in the uncharted depths of her subconscious labyrinth, where signals are cryptic, impulses raw, and the ultimate prize is not love, but dominance cloaked in mystery. In the quiet aftermath of her plea lies a crucible where masculinity is tempered, not by force, but by the eerie strength of restraint. To unlock this forbidden dimension is to dance boldly with uncertainty, to hold power in paradox, to spark desire not by closeness but by the clever absence that breathes life into every hidden longing. For in the shadows of "I need space" pulses a secret ancient as survival itself. Desire demands distance. And within that distance, the Alpha is reborn, waiting patiently to reclaim the throne of her heart. The space she demands is not an empty void. It is a crucible where your true nature is tested, distilled, and either forged stronger or melted away. Within this silence lies a fierce, silent calculus that few men comprehend. A biological cost-benefit analysis running beneath the surface of her gaze. Beneath the rhythm of her heartbeat that you seldom hear. The primal female mind, honed by survival strategies as ancient as the stars, weighs not just the warmth you offer but the danger your warmth conceals. There is a catch in the promise of intimacy. Safety and desire are locked in a paradoxical embrace, pulling in opposite directions, each demanding your navigation with the precision of a surgeon. Women's attraction resides in this forbidden territory between security and risk, an emotional paradox whispered through the evolutionary winds. When a woman steps back, cloaked in the phrase, "I need space," she is not merely seeking solitude. She is invoking the archetypal test embedded in her genes. A silent inquiry into your capacity to embody both stability and wildness without folding into the lesser versions of yourself. To her subconscious, you are a landscape of potential, a safe fortress or a threatening wilderness. Neither pure comfort nor relentless chase will ignite the intricate pattern of desire, only the tension. That fine line between approach and withdrawal holds the power to awaken the shadowed chambers of her longing. At the biochemical level, this tension orchestrates a delicate interplay. Dopamine, the messenger of reward and anticipation, thrives in uncertainty, in the gap between what is known and what is possible. If your presence becomes a lulling constant, dopamine's flame dims, and cortisol, the herald of stress, creeps into her neural pathways, whispering caution, suspicion, maybe even boredom. Oxytocin, the social glue, builds bridges of familiarity. Yes, but it also signals safety that can dull the sharper edges of attraction. Desire does not crave shackles. It grows in the tension between holding close and letting go, between revealing and concealing. This evolutionary impulse is a secret dance of dominance and submission without any spoken word. By stepping back, she tests your resilience, your ability to sustain your own emotional gravity without collapse. The man who shrinks into panic, chasing her withdrawal with frantic reassurance, forfeits unseen power. He feeds into her cortisol spike, embedding anxiety where desire once lived. But the man who stands firm, who owns his space, who respects the silent demand without begging for answer or comfort, steps into a darker realm of magnetism. This is an unspoken language, one that communicates strength not through volume, but through the measured cadences of absence and presence. His silence becomes a signal, a challenge wrapped in subtlety that her genetics recognize as a marker of valuable worth. In everyday moments, this dynamic is a battleground of invisible signals and unconscious calculations. When he respects the space she craves, it is not passivity but mastery, a strategic withdrawal that sharpens attraction rather than dulls it. Paradoxically, in giving space, he claims dominance. In surrendering control, he asserts an iron will. This dance pulls at her primal wiring, the desire for security tethered to the thrill of surrendering to an unpredictable force. Men who grasp this secret find themselves woven deeper into the labyrinth of female desire, where emotional intensity and mystery pulse in tandem beneath the surface of connection. But for those who fail to read this signal, frustration blooms like a slow poison. The plea for space becomes a fracture widening into void, because the untrained man interprets distance as defeat rather than invitation. He rushes to fill the silence, trivializing the profound test it contains. Vulnerable to the biological forces at play, he unknowingly amplifies the very distrust that space sought to diminish. Without the discipline to wield absence as a tool, he triggers the emotional paradox's darker twin, the flight from closeness born of fear, misunderstandings, and fading desire. The relationship unravels quietly, beneath the skin, through subtle shifts often unnoticed until it is too late. And so the landscape of modern romance conceals this dark truth. Desire is not the fruit of comfort, but the byproduct of well-timed discomfort. Attraction thrives not in unwavering presence, but in the seductive balance of appearing and withdrawing, of clarity and enigmatic shadow. This is the brutal biological trade-off men must accept and master, the tightrope between being near enough to be desired and distant enough to be missed. The tension between these poles is the crucible of authentic magnetism, shaped by epochs of evolutionary imperatives, yet still alive in every glance, every whispered word, every calculated silence. To understand this is to glimpse not only the mechanics of romantic pursuit but the very architecture of human connection at its most primal and potent. Here lies the secret territory where power and vulnerability entwine, where emotional paradoxes become truths, and where your masculinity is sculpted not by force or volume, but by the measured art of maintaining the pulse of desire through absence. The ultimate question lingers in the shadows. Can you hold your ground in silence? Can you wield space without fear? And in that tension, Can you become the man who does not merely react to her call for distance but commands the chemistry that makes her return to you? Time and again, drawn not despite the space you hold, but because of it. The moment "I need space" slips from her lips, a fracture opens not just in the relationship but deep within the architecture of your masculine identity. It sends a ripple through the core of your confidence, a silent siren that warns. Danger. Emotional territory shifting beneath your feet. Yet what lies beneath that plea is a battlefield of competing forces, biology warring with culture, instinct wrestling with cognition, desire entangled with fear. To understand why space becomes a weapon and a sanctuary, you must confront a darker truth about what women deeply crave and what men dread to lose. The fragile balance between safety and attraction, comfort and conquest. Safety, in the female brain, is the fortress around which life orbits. It is the signal that secures survival, that promises the warmth of oxytocin and the restful magic of predictable closeness. It is the emotional economy where trust accrues, where attachment anchors the soul. But safety is also the soil in which desire withers if left unchallenged. To prime a woman's sexual hunger, nature scripts an elaborate dance of tension, an interplay of release and restraint. Too much safety, paradoxically, breeds boredom, the silent assassin of passion. This is not a trivial contradiction. It is the evolutionary impulse carved into millennia of survival strategy. Attraction demands a risk, a flirtation with uncertainty, because desire itself is born in the crucible of tension, between the known and the unknown, between the gentle touch and the elusive absence. This tension is more than a concept, it is a biological fact. Dopamine, the molecule of craving, thrives on unpredictability. It surges when the brain encounters a challenge to its comfort, when mystery reignites the flickering flame of curiosity. The female brain is exquisitely tuned to this dance. When a man becomes too accessible, too consistent, the dopamine release wanes. The reward system signals familiar and safe, but it also marks finished, no longer exciting. Meanwhile, the cortisol levels creep upward, a subtle neurochemical alarm that warns. This is stagnation. This is threat to desire. And so, the primal mechanism triggers the instinct for distance, not just physical space, but psychological and emotional withdrawal. It is a biological reset, a way her body signals to her mind, pull back so I can want you again. Yet this distancing is not weakness. It is a test, a crucible where male dominance and masculine power are forged or broken. The evolutionary story behind it is relentless. For a woman to choose mating over mere companionship, she must see in a man something rare and vital: autonomy, unpredictability, dominance etched in subtle behaviors that resist the urge to surrender completely. She needs to feel that his essence remains untamed, that he is not merely orbiting her gravity but carving his own path through the wilderness of life. When she demands space, she is silently
Pull
challenging.
back so I can
Will you
want you
survive
again.
absence? Will you endure silence without panic? Will you keep your magnetism alive in the void you have created? Most men fail this test because their instinct, honed by social conditioning, screams the opposite. They rush to fill space, to soothe the unfamiliar void with promises of closeness, with explanations and pleas for reassurance. What they do not realize is that this frantic flurry extinguishes the very flame they aim to rekindle. To be magnetic is to harness the paradox of presence and absence, to hold your ground without surrendering your warmth. It is to invite her into a labyrinth where desire is not handed over transparently but earned through the tension of pursuit and withdrawal. Her primal brain responds to this dynamic not with comfort but with craving, not with calm but with acceleration of desire. Underneath this dance lies the raw evolutionary calculus of female choice, a system calibrated not for convenience but for genetic excellence and survival advantage. The genes coding for persistence, independence, and challenge signal a man's worth far more than simple kindness or availability. This is the bitter irony. The hidden code men seldom crack. The sweeter your ease, the weaker your pull, the harsher the distance you maintain, The more you resist instant closure, the greater your conquest. To women's primal minds, a man who refuses to bend at the first plea for closeness exudes strength. To submit too early is to confess vulnerability. To hold space without retreat is to claim dominance. And here lies the cruel beauty of the truth. Attraction is not a soft embrace, it is a regulated battlefield. The intimate psychology of women cycles through phases of safety and danger, approach and withdrawal, comfort and thrilling uncertainty. Her requests for distance are not a demand for abandonment but a summons to a higher tier of relational mastery. A call to wield absence like a finely sharpened weapon. To channel the shadows between encounters. To ignite the flicker of desire through strategic silence. As a man, your challenge is not to fill the void with noise, but to become the silence itself, the unseen force that commands attention without needing to be overtly present. In this enigmatic space between closeness and distance, danger and desire, lies the secret heartbeat of female attraction. It is a labyrinth where emotional paradox reigns supreme, where the strongest love is laced with uncertainty, and where dominance is shown as much by self-control as by boldness. To master this is to step into a realm where biology and psychology entwine, a place where instinct is both a shield and a spear. It is here, in the balancing act between holding on and letting go, that you find the alchemy of magnetism, transforming the simple plea for space into the most potent signal of connection. This is the riddle no man can avoid, the shadow every lover must face. The silent test that decides if desire fades or deepens into an inescapable, darkly compelling force. The truth that follows, "I need space," is not merely a sentence but a seismic shift in the battlefield of desire. A clandestine code conjured from deep within the vaults of female neurochemistry and the ancient scripts of survival. What feels like withdrawal, like dismissal, is instead a recalibration in the dance of power and vulnerability. A biological crescendo where attraction teeters on the razor edge of control and surrender. It is here, in this fragile chasm carved between proximity and distance, that the man's primal understanding is tested, not through force or pleading, but through the mastery of absence as an invisible form of presence. Imagine the female mind as a labyrinth, built upon layered corridors of instinct, emotion, and reason, governed not by simple affection but by the relentless pulse of evolutionary calculus. This labyrinth's deepest chambers guard the axis of safety and danger, security on one hand, and attraction on the other, forever locked in a tension that defies naive interpretation. Biology has sewn these chambers with threads of hormone, oxytocin fostering the sanctuary of connection, dopamine lighting the fire of curiosity and seduction, and cortisol raising the ancient flags of caution when equilibrium is disturbed. A woman's cry for space is not weakness but a shockwave rippling through these systems. A strategic withdrawal that signals, reset the equation, or risk the collapse of desire. Beneath this biological framework lies a haunting truth few men dare to confront. Attraction is an act of paradoxical self-resistance. The female psyche craves a man who is near but untouchable, who shows power not through access but through strategic elusiveness. To be too close, too available, too transparent. This is to become nothing more than a comforting fixture. A predictable pattern that triggers the release of cortisol, that silent assassin of passion. Because in the architecture of female desire, safety is the enemy of excitement. Desire requires a trace of danger, a whisper of uncertainty, a covert challenge wrapped in the guise of aloofness. This dynamic is not a flaw or cruelty, it is an evolutionary impulse. A primal strategy designed to sift the truly dominant from the superficially good. When she says she needs space, she tests a man's capacity to command the invisible, to hold his own essence steady in the absence of her gaze, to possess an unshakable self beyond her emotional orbit. This tests his independence but also his confidence, a delicate balance where desperation is fatal, and calm detachment becomes the ultimate form of engagement. She watches not only what he says, But what he leaves unsaid, not only his words, but the voids between them. The silent tension becomes a crucible in which masculine magnetism is either forged or dissolved. From an evolutionary perspective, this is a negotiation as old as humanity itself, a dialogue not just between man and woman, but between competing biological imperatives. The female brain evolved to value men who could navigate ambiguity without cowering. Men who could embody both protector and enigma, warmth and wildness. This duality stirs the dopamine pathways, lighting up the reward centers in ways comfort and consistency alone never could. The man who masters space wields it like a weapon, carving out zones of mystery where her desire can lurk, waiting, electrified by the suspense of unpredictability. He becomes not just a figure of love but a force of fascination, the axis upon which her emotional universe tilts. Yet the consequences of misunderstanding or ignoring this hidden code are profound. Men who rush to fill the void with explanations, apologies, or overcompensation trigger a cascade of cortisol, instantly fracturing the delicate balance. Desire evaporates into frustration. Connection hardens into resentment. Instead of excitement, she feels suffocated. Instead of attraction, she feels obligation.
Cascade.
The relationship transforms from a thrilling, volatile exchange of power into a stagnant pond where all vitality drowns. This is the dire irony. The very efforts to secure affection can become the architects of abandonment. And countless men, unaware of the biology beneath the surface, watch helplessly as what once burned bright flickers and dies in their hands. There is, however, a redemptive path, a hidden corridor in the labyrinth few men find, the art of enigmatic presence. It is not retreat nor neglect, but a strategic withholding that amplifies presence through absence. In this space, masculinity is refined into its purest form, quiet confidence, unwavering autonomy, and an unspoken promise of challenge. He does not shrink from silence, he commands it. He does not chase certainty, he radiates it. This creates an electric tension, a dark magnetic field, that the female mind instinctively registers as fertile ground for heightened attraction. The man who understands this wields absence as effectively as presence, transforming space from a weapon of loss into a tool of deep longing. Now, consider the deeper philosophical implications of this dynamic. Desire, stripped of its romanticized softness, reveals itself as a battlefield of impermanence and tension, a realm where safety and danger are siblings and where simultaneous holding and letting go shape the very marrow of connection. It compels us to confront the unsettling but essential fact that longing thrives not in possession, but in the oscillation between nearness and distance. To love without this dance is to grasp shadows. To win without it is to surrender power. This paradox is the crucible of all magnetic relationships, the silent war behind the tender moments, the invisible war that births and destroys desire in equal measure. In this darkened chamber of human interaction, where the primal and the refined entwine, the words, "I need space," are a plea, a warning, and a challenge all at once, an invitation to embrace the fierce duality of connection and autonomy. To live within this tension is to awaken a form of masculinity that transcends the ordinary, a masculinity born not from control but from mysterious, self-contained power. It beckons the question, can you hold her world with strength enough to let it go? Or will you crumble, blinded by the desperate need to close the distance? This is the forbidden knowledge few dare to claim, the secret heartbeat beneath the surface of every whispered goodbye. And in its shadows lies the true art of attraction, waiting patiently for the man willing to dance with absence rather than cling to presence.